What do you think parents think that means, that when an academy says, oh, we can provide education on this day release? What do you think the parent thinks that means, and what typically does that actually?
Wow. What does it mean? My understanding is that they get to about an hour to an hour and a half of time to do educational tasks. Now, if you turn up there with no educational task to do, you're not going to do much for an hour and a half, are you? You're going to end up chatting to your mates, etc., etc. At our school, obviously, they do go with educational tasks because they have to do that. Otherwise, they're not allowed to go. As a parent, are you thinking that educational task is like taught lessons? I think that's what you've got to. It isn't. It is a teacher sat in a room with 15 to 20 kids from different schools doing different subjects, different work at different levels. Wow. So they are not being taught. That person is there to maybe help them if they've got a bit of an issue with something, etc., etc. But generally, that teacher / tutor that they'll have will be, maybe English, maths, and science based. If your son or daughter is currently doing GCSE French coming up or something like that, that support might not be there, or Spanish, etc., etc. So to have a plan for them to do that work and to know that I know it sounds funny, but they then need to go back to the school and say, is my son or daughter coming back having done some work?
Yeah.
I think a parent probably thinks it is slightly different. Maybe some know a little bit more. Maybe some are prepared to ask a little bit more. So maybe some are scared to ask because, we've had some parents that have said absolutely no to going on day release. There is no way my son is missing a whole day of school or half a day of school, anything.
Have you seen that impact chances?
Yeah. Would they have still been
able to football club that tried to say that a student might not get signed if he wasn't there more often? In a meeting with me, stood there, and I was quite shocked, I have to admit, and I'd never mentioned to that particular club at the time that I had played myself and I knew more about it than they probably thought. They just thought I was a teacher, and I was quite shocked that they'd said that. The student ended up doing very well at GCSEs and did get signed.
Amazing.
I don't know. That's very difficult to say. I can only say that on that one because I was sat in a meeting. I don't know what is said to individuals, obviously at the football clubs, etc., about going on day release or not going on day release. I suppose if we come back to the original question of, as a parent, what would you be asking? I'd be asking, what support can you give me? And I know it sounds funny, but is there, can you help with travel? All these things, is there a minibus that can pick my kid up from school or somewhere closer to home so I don't have to travel all that way? If you've got other kids yourself, that you can't leave work early and all these sorts of things. And I know football clubs do that. Some send taxis, some will send minibuses, some will pick kids up, and then you'll speak to a parent, and I know they do it, and the parent will be like, what? They do that? I didn't know that. And you're like, but they just don't think to ask. I think some are so happy that their son or daughter have been signed by a professional club, and that is what they see their kids so happy about doing, being involved in, that they don't want to rock the boat. And it's, remember, again, go back to the kid who's further down the line and the candidate. Those parents are always the ones that ask for more and are stronger in what they're asking for.
Sure. If you were to look at your, I don't know if you have any stats of, obviously you've seen a lot of several athletes, young footballers go through your ranks. Are there stats that you have that show the ones that have, continued to succeed and gone on to play professional? Because in the bigger scheme, you hear the 0.01% make it.
So relate with moment. So of the, I have to keep remembering year on year exactly. I think there is 11 that have signed professional out of about 23 or 24 that have signed academy contracts. So that's quite a high percentage, which is fantastic. But just because you've signed a professional contract doesn't mean you can't end up being a PE teacher sat here on this Zoom call at 40 years old. So it's the ones that then go on to make a career out of that. Now, oldest ones, so it was a few years when I was at Aldenham before we started sort of getting we sort of changed our culture a little bit and the way we did things and had some better footballers coming through. They're about 23, 24 now. And some of them are still playing professional and doing well for themselves. And some of them have dropped down to sort of national league level. Some are playing non-league level. Still earning decent money, but combining that with work. And some have dropped out completely.
I mean, that's an interesting point as well. Obviously, you know, from your career, you've gone into education, an amazing career. I'm sure you'll agree you enjoy your work.
I did football. I think that sounds quite fun.
And then you just mentioned about other leagues as well. How, you know, if you talk to your students now about the opportunities in sport, do you talk about other avenues, other leagues being successful still in those areas? Is that something?
So, do you mean if they don't make it at a top level team, they can play at a lower level, etc.? Yeah, of course, yeah. And I think there's different ways to look at being a professional footballer, isn't there? Because obviously the vast majority look at who plays for Manchester United and Liverpool and Arsenal and Chelsea, etc., and astronomical amounts every week. The vast majority of professional footballers in this country, remember there are 110 professional teams roughly in this country. The vast majority of them are earning a wage that is more akin to a teacher's wage, which you need to work until 60 odd years old to do. So yes, they can still make a career, but they're going to need something to fall back on at the end of that, because they aren't probably going to make enough money to retire at 30 something years old and live comfortably for the rest of their lives. Now, there's obviously opportunities in football, coaching, etc., etc. There's also, you go all the way back to when they're 16 years old. If it doesn't quite happen for them at 16, there are other opportunities there.
This is what I really wanted to ask you about. Yeah.
Non-league then, we've got a boy at the moment playing a really good level of non-league football who's currently doing his A-levels, and he is heading off to America on a scholarship next year. And amazing, fantastic.
Can you tell us a bit more about that? How does that happen? Because, you know, what we're really interested in doing some, you know, covering this a bit, aren't we, Marcy? Like, you know, within the platform, but, you know, how does one go about getting a scholarship?
I can get you someone to talk to. That's
that'd be fantastic.
Oh yeah, I mean, we had a student last year that was all set up to go over to Washington University in America. Literally 5 weeks before he went, Watford rang him up and said, "We want you on a trial." 5 weeks later, they signed him as a professional, having just finished his A-levels. And now he's, you know, playing for their under 21s and doing really well, and, you know, turned down that chance, but it was there for him. Other students over the last couple of years have taken that route. Now, that route tends to be for students who have been either released by clubs when they were 16, not quite made the grade at that point, or students who may have been released at sort of 13, 14, 15, still very good footballers, maybe physically weren't capable at that particular time, have grown later. The clubs are, you know, less or reluctant to sign them at that point, and it's a different route for them. So as a school at the moment, we have a connection with a company, and they come in each year, do a talk to 15, 20 or so boys, and up to them then, if they're then, you know, their parents want to sort of sign them up with that company. There is a cost to it, as you can imagine. I won't say exactly what it costs. There is a cost to it, they then sign up, and then they do a whole thing, you know, working with them to sell them or try and get them an opportunity at an American university with a biggest scholarship as they can possibly get. To try and cover the extortionate costs that it is to go to a university in America. But what some of those kids are getting, in some ways, is a better product than what academies can offer, because that student is going to go over there, train every single day, have unbelievable resources.
Yeah,
they're also going to get a degree at the end of it. Whereas, remember, 99% of kids who sign for football clubs here are going to get released at 18 with probably a BTEC at best.
Yeah.
And it's one of the other things, if you're a parent, by the way, make sure that the club can do A level with your son, not just BTECs.